Welcome back to another fly fishing Stillwater video. Today we're going to change topics a little bit, and instead of doing a tying video, we're going to do a early season trout tactics video. How to catch trout in those early season right after ice off scenarios. Many of you guys know in the interior of BC here, we're starting to see some lakes open up. So everyone's getting out, itching, getting ready to catch their first trout of the year. So pretty exciting. But we're here today, we're going to talk about what kind of techniques I use to catch fish right after ice off. So let's get to it. First off, I want to talk about where in the lakes that I focus my efforts fishing. This is super important to people that are new to stillwater fishing or new to lake fishing in BC's interior. Right after ice off, kind of the things I look for the most part is I'm fishing shallow water, kind of between 12 to 5 feet, depending on the lake, depending on the shoal structure. One of the best advantages you can have if you're new to a lake is looking at the bathymetric map, where it kind of shows you the topography of the lake bottom, focusing on shoals. Fish will cruise these shoals for staple food sources like leeches, scuds, even bloodworms sometimes are great early season flies to fish on those shallow depths. My personal favorite is a bunny or a rabbit tail leech. Kind of that jig style or the balance style, usually in like a size 10. Black and blue is kind of my favorite color. And I'll hang that under an indicator. That's a technique I'll talk about later on in the video. Or I will use like an intermediate or like a full sink line, maybe up to like a type 3 inches per second, and I'll slowly retrieve leeches or scuds really slow over drop-offs or just shallow shoals. Usually between 7 to 10 feet is kind of the area that I'm focused on. And the reason that these fish are cruising these shoals is because that's where food is early on during early ice off. They're not going to be feeding on chironomid hatches down in like 30 feet of water. You won't see them there very often. So focus your efforts on shallower water, and that static technique or the full sink technique can be very effective. Personally, those fish are going to get quite lethargic. The water's quite cold, usually in the low 40s for Fahrenheit right after ice off. So those fish aren't going to take a fly hard. You're going to see your indicator slowly drop, but a static technique's really good for that. So let's talk about how I set that up. All right, let's talk about my indicator setup. How do I fish an indicator? How is an indicator rig set up? For me personally, any tapered leaders, throw them out of the window. You don't need those. The reason why I don't use a tapered leader when I'm indicator fishing is that tapered leader, if you imagine it tapers down from that 40 pound to 20 pound to 10. Eventually, say you're fishing in an 8 pound leader, only the last 2.5 feet are actually 8 pounds. For that reason, if you're fishing a light fly, say a chironomid, or an unbalanced leech under an indicator, that line will coil. It'll have that memory that your fly is not heavy enough to straighten out that line and have a good indication of, say, a fish eats your fly and spits it out. You won't even know because those curls will just have straightened out and then recoiled in that time that fish has eaten your fly and spit it out. So for that reason, what I like to do is I'll run 10 pound, see if that focuses, 10 pound Seaguar and fluoro from my fly line directly to my swivel. And so say an example, I'm fishing 8-9 feet of water. I'm going to fish about 7 feet, 8 feet of fluoro there in 10 pound. And then I will fish a little barrel swivel. If you guys haven't seen those swivels, look them up, pretty easy. Usually a 12 or a 10, something that just helps the fly sink down just a little bit faster. And then from there, I'm going to use, if that focuses, it's just 3X Fluoro, 8.4 pounds, just a little thinner than that 10-pound stuff. Early season, when the trout haven't been pressured too much, I can get away with that 3X stronger line, bring them in quicker. But later on in the season, sandfish and chironomids, I might go down to 4X, which the diameter of the line's a little thinner, harder for the trout to see, and I find that I just catch more fish that way. And then from the end of that 3X, I'm going to fish, say, my leech. Or early season, you'll often see fish keyed in on Daphnia. If you haven't seen what Daphnia here are, I'll pull up a screen here and show you what we caught the other day. And we stomach pumped a fish and we found it was full of Daphnia. And a good representation of a Daphnia fly are these little blobs. I will throw up a photo of that later. It wasn't very clear, but I've also tied a video for you guys, fly tying Stillwater pattern. It's called the Blob. Look it up. Super good pattern to have. Also fishing static under an indicator. Great pattern. Love that stuff. It also worked for us quite well the other day. So make sure you have those in your early season fishing tactic in your fly box. Make sure you just have a couple around. You definitely want one. And then the second setup I fish in early season is a full sink line. I like having either a type 5 or a type 3, so 3 inches or 5 inches per second sinking. And I'm going to cast a booby, I'll cast leeches, or I'll cast a scud, work slowly along shoals, drop-offs, any kind of features in a lake that trout will congregate looking for food. Boobies is a kind of an interesting fly. If you haven't seen one, I have a video of one in my Stillwater fly tying series there, and it's big, it's got foam eyes, and I'll fish it on a full type 6 or a type 7 line, and I'll cast that along the bottom over drop-offs, 20-30 feet of water sometimes, and let it sink right down to the bottom. And the important part is that you're stripping that quite quickly. It's a fast strip, not a slow strip, and you want to see that booby just fluctuate in the bottom, kind of agitating fish, getting them excited. The takes usually on a booby are quite fast, quite strong, and you'll definitely know when you've hooked one, not weeds. And the other scenario, if I'm fishing like a type 3, usually I'm fishing an unweighted leech, not with like any tungsten, maybe just a brass bead. And I'm working that slowly along shoals, over drop-offs, looking for any cruising fish. And if I'm fishing a scud, I'll kind of modify my stripping technique to make it a little slower to kind of accommodate for how fast a scud swims. I don't often have too much faith in scuds. It's something that I'm fairly mediocre at fishing. I still like to toss them out, but they are effective. They are staples along with leeches and bloodworms and Daphnia for early season trout. So definitely try some out if you're not having any luck on the lake. They can make or break a day. All right, and just to add, I want to talk a little bit about what kind of fishing equipment I carry with me when I'm on the water. Personally, I fish out of a 10-foot flat bottom boat. I have a double anchor system, and the key to a double anchor system is that it holds you in place. So when you're fishing a static presentation in one location, you are making sure that your flies remain in the zone by keeping the boat where it is stationary, so the boat's not drifting in the wind, taking you away from your fishing zone. Your boat's stuck in one position, it's not spinning around. That's why you have both anchors out of either side of the boat, so the boat's stationary. That is a key technique when you're fishing a static presentation. Super important. I definitely recommend that anyone, if you're fishing out of a pontoon, at least have an anchor, or a belly boat, at least have one anchor so you're always in the same spot. You're not moving around, especially if you find the fish at a certain depth or they're cruising this one spot along a shoal. It's really nice just to stay where you are. If you're fishing a full sink technique, anchors aren't as important. It's still nice to stay in one spot, fully anchored, stationary, and you're casting and retrieving over a shoal or over a drop-off. That's super nice to be stationary and stay in the same place. That way you can cover a certain piece of water, you can move to the next, a new spot, be stationary, fish from that spot, and just not drifting around. It causes too many issues, kind of frustration amongst fishermen when they're drifting around and they're not in a one spot where they keep catching fish. If you're drifting away, it's kind of frustrating. So anchors are super important. The second part, what I carry on my boat, is a fish finder. I don't have a high quality one. I just use one to at least tell me what depth I'm in. So in this video, I have a Humminbird Buddy. It's pretty old, it's black and white. All I use it for is to tell the depth. So I want to know what depth I'm in. That way I know what depth to put my indicator at if I'm doing a static presentation, or if I'm doing a full sink presentation, I know how long to count down, and I know where my fly will be within that water column, within that shoal or that drop off when I retrieve it. So super important. Other than that, basic life jacket, oars, you name it, got all those in the boat. Basically that's it. Fish finder, anchors. You can row yourself. Electric motors are nice. Definitely have one of those. And yeah, that is my early season Stillwater video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Tune in next time. Thanks. I almost forgot. Throw pump. If you don't have one of these, get one. Also, keep winging it around. Know how to use it. It's important to depress it before you slide it into a fish's mouth, because you're going to open it and it's going to suck in whatever the food or whatever the bugs or the insects that fish has been eating. You don't want to squeeze water into the fish's stomach or its throat. You're going to cause damage and potentially kill that fish, which is not what you want to do unless you're keeping it anyways. Then whatever. But if you don't want to kill the fish and you're practicing catch and release, please depress it. Rinse it out with water once or twice to lubricate it, but depress it, slide it into the fish's mouth, open it. You'll see a bunch of insects kind of slide up into the bulb. Bring it out, let the fish go, and then make sure you got like a little plastic vial or a cup or a dish, you name it, and then you can squeeze whatever you got back into that dish, and you can hopefully identify, key in, figure out what those fish are eating. Get one of these. They're not expensive. All right, see you guys next time.